Hello everyone, welcome back to Paper Made Me Do It. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my thought processes behind why I'm going to be doing what I'm about to be doing in my planning life. So you know you're a planner when you find yourself planning your next planner, am I right? And I have been in a Hobonichi Weeks since the first of this year. I actually started it when the book started back in November of 2019. And like many of you, I have found myself in a rut over the past few months, couple months. And I will say as a disclaimer, I can't blame this 100% on the COVID pandemic. This is just how my mind works, and this is something that I have found myself cycling through year after year after year. So for the past 5 years at least. So this is not something new for me. But every year around this time, I start having that itch of wanting to try something new or different. And last year, I found myself in almost the identical situation where I had been in a Hobonichi Weeks from January to May. Just got that itch and had to scratch it, wanted to try something different. So the main difference between last year and this year is that last year I did a complete switch. I abandoned the Hobonichi Weeks that I had been in for about 5 months, and I decided to try bullet journaling. That lasted about 2 months. I became bored of it. I'll talk about why I think that happened later in this video. But anywho, around August of last year, I left the bullet journal and went back into a Hobonichi Weeks, but it wasn't the original one I had been in. I had purchased a pre-owned cover around that time last year, and the seller included an unused Hobonichi Weeks Mega that she had bought for that cover and never used. So in August of last year, I went into that Weeks Mega and ended up by the end of the year having 3 separate books: regular Hobonichi Weeks through May, June and July in a bullet journal, and then August through the end of the year in a separate Weeks Mega. And that is one thing that frustrates me, is when I allow myself to completely switch like that and end up in multiple books. I always have regret that at the end of the year, there's not one book that I could go back to as a resource and kind of flip through and see, you know, what happened last year. What was my life like in 20, you know, whatever the year may be. So when 2020 started out, that is pretty much the only goal that I set for myself, was to complete one book from January to December so that I can have one book to archive. So the main difference between last year and this year is that I'm not going to allow myself to do a complete switch and abandon this week's. If anything, at a minimum, it will look something like this week, where I just, you know, use it for maybe just jotting down and not necessarily decorative spreads. This was what last week looked like. I'm definitely going to continue using my weeks to some degree. I've had maybe 2 or 3 blank weeks this year, but I plan to continue using the weeks to some degree. So I'm not giving up on my weeks, but I am going to allow myself to try something new on the side, so to speak, just to see if it'll help pull me out of this rut that I have found myself in for the past couple months. So the main reason I wanted to share this video with y'all is that in case you find yourself in a similar situation and you're maybe thinking about what's out there and thinking about different things that you could try to pull yourself out of a slump, I wanted to talk about the bullet journal method specifically because I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about bullet journaling, and a lot of people, I feel, don't even give this method a thought because they may have some preconceived notion of what a bullet journal is or has to be, and that very well may not be the case. So I wanted to just share with you what the 2 months that I did in a bullet journal last year looked like, talk about what the method actually is designed to be, and then I'm going to do some pre-planning, because I'm definitely not advocating that if you decide to try something new, you have to go out and buy all the things, okay? You can bullet journal in a 99-cent notebook from the dollar store. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy all the things if you do decide to try this. But me, I have that, whatever you want to call it, personality trait, characteristic, habit. When I decide that I want to try something new, I have the habit of just tuck, drop, and roll, and just fall down that rabbit hole as hard as I can. And that's what I've done this year, true to form. And so I decided I may try a new size this year. And I've ordered a B6 notebook cover and a couple B6 notebooks. And I had a few thought processes behind that decision. Number one, I've never ever been in a full B6 size before, so I thought it would be fun to try a new size. Another thought behind that is that the B6 is smaller than A5, so I thought if this does end up working out well for me and I end up going longer than 2 months in it, maybe I would actually feel the book quicker because it's smaller than A5. But my cover and books that I've ordered have not arrived yet. I'm hoping they'll be here next week and I can get all of this set up before the month of June and actually start this whole process in June. So until those products arrive, since there is so much blank notebook left in this book, I thought I would pre-plan what I want my bullet journal to be and look like. And then when those products do arrive, I can just dive right in and get them set up. Before we go into the method, I'll just do a quick flip through and give you a little visual of what happened last year. So the book starts with the index, and you get 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of index in the A5. So after the index, they have a pre-printed section here for future logging. And this is how I did my future log last year. I wasn't completely satisfied with the aesthetics of how this turned out. I regretted coloring these in with these highlighters after the fact. So when I got into the actual meat of the book, I decided I wanted to go the exact opposite of what I think a misconception of the bullet journal can be in the community. So the bullet journal, I think sometimes we immediately think of the highly decorative and elaborate bullet journal spreads that we see people setting up on YouTube. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And while I've been thinking about this whole process for the last couple weeks, I've actually been watching a lot of those videos to get ideas. However, inherently is not a requirement of having a bullet journal or what a bullet journal represents or is supposed to accomplish. So last year, because I was kind of in the same position, in a little bit of a slump, looking for something different, my thought at that point was I did not want to obligate myself to having something highly decorative that was going to be time consuming and possibly set myself up for failure right out the gate. So I decided to swing to the exact opposite end of the pendulum and do almost no decoration. So this is just where you count out the number of dots, you know, for your grid, so you know where to space things in some spreads. But ironically, I started this in June last year, so as I said, I'm right on my same annual cycle here. The new books will hopefully start in June this year too. But this is what the monthly log looks like in the bullet journaling system. So you have your numbers of the month down one column, and then the first day of the week beside each number, so you can visualize, you know, where you are in the month. And then I just made little hash marks here to divide the week of each, you know, each week within the month. This was kind of what you would call, I guess, a collection. I was traveling to Los Angeles at this time last year for the Baumkuchen and Superior Labor Inspiration Lab, and so I just recorded some information about that trip. This started my running dailies. This is to be the meat and potatoes of the bullet journal system, and what kind of differentiates it from some other pre-designed planners where you have a particular amount of space already designated for you. With the running dailies, they are supposed to be done in real time, and you allow yourself whatever space you need. So like on this particular week, the first week I did it, I only took up one page for the entire week. This was Monday, and then the rest of the week I just used a couple lines. You know, I was just kind of hadn't really found my groove yet. And then I went into the next weekly log. So the weekly log is actually not one of the main 4 collections that Ryder Carroll suggests in his system. Anyway, this started the next week. Went into my running to-do list and dailies. Week of, same thing. This was kind of a little collection, so to speak, something different, where I wrote out what I would like my ideal routine to be for a morning routine, afternoon, and bedtime. This started the running dailies for this week, and you can see how instead of one page, this took 1, 2, 3 pages this week. I started adding in a little habit tracking. So that was June. Now we're into the month of July. I had set some July goals, just left some space at the bottom of that page for notes. This is the July monthly log, and weekly and into the dailies. I was sticking with that little habit tracker section. And so again, it took 1, 2, 3 pages for the running dailies this week. Started tracking some spending, but that did not go very well. You can see here in mid-July, I was already beginning to kind of fall away from the habit tracking. And this tells me the fact that these are set up like this, I set this up in advance, and I must have left myself just room here for the dailies. I was already getting away from the inherent method of true bullet journaling, where you allow yourself whatever space is necessary for each day. So this is something that I want to avoid when I try this again. Now these couple pages are kind of like collections. This was in July of last year, late July, so school was about to start. I've got 3 school-age boys, so I had made lists of their school supply list that we needed to buy. And 1, 2, 3 pages again. And you can see how some, like Monday and Thursday, I took quite a bit of space. Tuesday, I didn't need that much. So you just take what you need, and you don't start ahead until that actual day. And then week of 7/22, and that was all she wrote. So this was a 2-month experiment last year. Looking back, I think that part of the reason why I did get bored of this is because I didn't do any decoration at all, and I was trying to keep myself in the box of making sure that this was a non-decorative planner, you know. And I think anytime we put hard restrictions on ourselves, if you have a creative spirit, you're setting yourself up to be bored of that or force yourself to move on sooner than later, because you don't allow your mind to go wherever it needs to go. You know, if you're creative and you're in the mood and you want to do a sketch or something creative, then you need to allow yourself to do that, or otherwise you're going to give up on whatever restricted process you're in. So when my new books do arrive, I'm trying to kind of already be in the mindset of not forcing myself to do one thing or the other. It doesn't have to be a highly decorated, elaborate book week after week after week. And it also does not have to be an absolutely non-decorative text-only planner. Now, around this time last year, ironically, the group in the community that usually sponsors or does the like One Book July, they had last year made this kind of the theme of the month and kind of dove into bullet journaling, the actual book from Ryder Carroll, who is the creator of the bullet journal. And so I bought the book during that time. It is a beautiful book, as you can see, and I found it to be very effective, interesting. I went through, I've got some notes we'll quickly go through, but I went through, anytime you see this highlighting in gray, I did that with a zebra mild liner highlighter and just kind of highlighted the things that spoke to me. So it says the mission is to help us become mindful about how we spend our two most valuable resources in life, our time and our energy. So to me, that's probably the biggest misconception about bullet journaling that I hear and see on social media, is I think a lot of people say, I don't have time to do a bullet journal. And I'm just assuming, maybe I'm wrong. Y'all give me your thoughts in the comments, please. But when I hear that comment, I always assume that that person must think that they have to sit down and spend an hour each week doing some type of decorative spread, when the actual bullet journaling method is the total opposite of that. It's meant to save you time so you have more available time to do the things that matter to you. So that's one, probably the biggest misconception that I see out there, is that bullet journaling takes more time to do. It's actually the exact opposite of that. And this really spoke to me. Being busy, however, is not the same thing as being productive. Hello. For most of us, being busy is code for being functionally overwhelmed. That is where I find myself more often than not, and that's usually when I start looking for something else, because I realize that what I'm doing is not working. I may be, you know, busy as hell, but nothing's getting done. So this next little setup here is an example of a mental inventory, and this is something that you can do kind of in this pre-planning process on a scratch piece of paper, or you could include it in the actual book if you wanted to be able to refer back to it. But he suggests breaking up 3 categories of what you're actually working on, what you should be working on, and what you want to be working on. So it's almost like you're already going into that mindfulness area of doing a brain dump. What am I actually doing? What do I want to be doing? What should I be doing? And he talks about how anytime something does come to your mind in terms of a task, to kind of ask yourself this quick little line of questioning, and it's really just 2 questions. So the first question is the task vital? If the answer is yes, then obviously you're going to keep it. If the answer is no, if it's not a vital task, does it matter? Well, if the answer is yes, if it matters to you, then you keep it. But if the answer is no, then it's a distraction and you get rid of it. So you're thinking about not only what you're putting in your bullet journal, but why are you putting it there? Is it something that really matters in a sense that it actually needs to be done, or you just enjoy it and it brings you joy? Or is it something that's just a distraction that you need to let go of because it's interfering with your productivity? So the true bullet journal ideally is this sweet spot that is a blend of a task list and a journal and a planner kind of all rolled into one. It's not just a task list. These are the key concepts of the system: the index, which I will do, future log, which I will do. And the future log, okay, so when people say, I don't have time to do a bullet journal, I don't have time to draw out all, 12 calendars. Well, if you want to, then you obviously can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's what the future log is. Now on his future log, his is very simple. He just has the month written out. I do like the concept of having the added little visual block calendar, just so, let's say you walk into a doctor's appointment in July and they say, okay, we want to see you back in October, and you're going to schedule your appointment out. Well, if I'm just looking at the word October, I'm a very visual person, and I would not be able to schedule an appointment that way. I'd be digging into my phone, pulling up my digital calendar, and, all that. So the benefit of having your block calendar here is when you're standing there in July needing to make an appointment for October, you can look ahead and you can see, well, I've already got an appointment on the 21st, so if they ask you, can you come on October the 4th at 10 o'clock? Well, there's nothing on the 4th. It's a Friday. Sure. And if you scheduled that appointment, then you would simply write for Dr. So-and-so, 10 o'clock. You can schedule events and appointments and things for months in advance without having to have an actual 2-page square calendar spread drawn out. And then the monthly log provides an overview of time and tasks for the current month. And so that's what this looked like. And to me, this was a little jumbled, so I may actually, if there's room in my B6, I may actually split my monthly log into a 2-page spread so I can have a blank line between each numbered day. That way, if there ends up being multiple things going on in one day, I'll have a little more room and it not be so jumbled. So hopefully that'll work out in the new book. And then the daily log serves as your catch-all for rapid logging your thoughts throughout each day. The dailies I did do last year. And those are the things, the daily logs are supposed to not be pre-set up like this. A true daily log is exactly that. It's something that you start on that day, and then you just allow yourself however much room you need for that day. If you end up only writing 3 lines, then the next morning you can start the next day, skip 1 line and start it on that same page. But if you end up needing a page and a half for Monday, then, do that. And then start Tuesday on the next page. So the daily logs are kind of to me, the main thing that differentiates this system from other planners. And so I made myself a note here, plus the weekly log. He does not include that, but I guess that's why I continue to buy the Hobonichi Weeks year after year, because I like being able to view my week at a glance. So I will also do a weekly log between the monthly and dailies. collections. You can add collections at any point in your book, and then you just index them. He considers the main 4 collections the index, feature log, monthly log, and daily log. But I also think about specialty collections, which is what you see a lot of on social media and bullet journals. Specialty collections would be things like books to read, movies to watch, new recipes to try. You know, I mean, it would be unlimited, the amount of collections you could add if you wanted to. And then migration is very important. He talks about it being a monthly process, but I, again, have to do mine on a weekly basis. So at the end of each week, ideally, I'll sit down for a few minutes and migrate. I'll go back to any tasks that I had listed that needed to be done that week, and anything that did not get marked off, I would migrate it to the next week. And so this concept of rapid logging goes back to the whole idea of I don't have time to bullet journal. Well, it's actually supposed to be very quick, and you know, a traditional way, you may have long text written, you know, sentences about things that you need to do, but in the rapid logging system, it's like you just write down just enough keywords so that you know what you're talking about. So instead of writing down, you know, call Keith back to figure out where we should eat this weekend, the rapid logging would be Keith, call Saturday dinner. I would have even abbreviated Saturday to SAT, you know. So rapid logging should be very quick during the week and not time consuming. This was just an example of what some of his daily logs look like. This is his monthly log, and see it, his looks a lot less jumbled than mine did. And it may be different starting out because we really don't have a lot going on right now during this COVID pandemic, but in more normal times, whatever that means these days, I used to have a lot going on and mine would look kind of jumbled. So if mine looked like that, I would leave it like that, but I think I am going to try to add an extra line between each day just in case. And so here was an example of his future logs, very simple. Like I say, I will add the little visual block monthly calendar just so I can tell. Someone asked me, you know, 3 months from now, what do you have going on the 11th? Well, I like to at a glance be able to tell what is the 11th. Is that a Monday or is that a Saturday, you know? And then here he gives examples of setting up, how to set up your bullet journal. So you set up the index first, future logs, your monthly log. I'll do a weekly, then the daily, and custom collections can go anywhere. A key concept here that I wanted to bring up is that a custom collection should serve a purpose. So don't feel like, if you do decide to try this, don't feel like you have to have every collection that you see other people having. Like one of the most common ones that I see a lot of people setting up each month is a mood tracker. I just would not do that. I'm not judging anyone that does. I think it's a cool idea, but I just know myself well enough to know I would never go back to that page. That's not something that I personally track. So don't set up a whole spread or a collection just because you see other people doing it and you think it has to be in the bullet journal. Habit trackers. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I definitely have some new habits that I'd like to form, but historically I've been bad about actually going back and using them. So I'm not quite sure yet if I'm going to do a habit tracker or not, or if I do, I'm not quite sure how. So this is one of his examples for habit tracking that's very simple. Instead of having separate spreads for that, he just goes back to the monthly log. So this monthly log that normally looks like this, this would only work if yours was simple like his and not all jumbled up. But he went to that monthly log and just said, okay, C for cooking, R for reading, G for gym. Just put those 3 top priority habit codes out to the side, and then each day that he did that, he would mark it off. That's a neat idea. I don't think in a B6 I'll have room for that, but that, you know, if you don't like the idea of having 2-page elaborate habit tracking spreads, that may be an idea for you. So anyway, I hope that clears up some misconceptions that the whole bullet journal concept is actually supposed to be very functional and very quick, and it's supposed to give you more time to do what's important, not be something that you don't have time to do in the first place. So I'm going to say, for my pre-planning here, I'm going to have an index, and I'm going to do 5 to 6 pages since the B6 size is smaller. Now, cover page, that's something that you see a lot in decorative spreads. I'm putting a question mark by that because I don't, if I feel, you know, artistically inspired and want to do some type of cover page, then I will. But I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. That doesn't have to be done, but there's nothing wrong with it if you do. And so after the index, you would go into the future log, which is extremely important. So you can plan future events. And since I'll be starting in June, I'm not going to set up a full year. I'm just going to do June through December. And then after that, it was the monthly log. And I'm adding in my own, you know, and that's something that Ryder Carroll has been, I think, really great about mentioning throughout all of his suggestions, is the bullet journal is supposed to work for you. So I've never heard him seem offended that people take and modify what he suggests. I think he actually appreciates that when people can take his suggestions and then modify them if necessary to make them really work for them. That's the whole purpose. And then the dailies, and they need to be running dailies, not pre-set up. The only thing that I'll need to decide is which collections I want to include. And some that I've thought of are a page for Pinterest. I would like to have a page for a wish list and start actually using that and trying to wait whatever, a week, a month, whatever. I've been bad about impulse buying this past month. If I see something I like, add to cart. So I'm going to try to start using a wish list and letting things simmer a bit and then deciding later, do I still really want it, or is it something that I can do without? I need an online order kind of tracking page for those things that do make the cut. Thought about a currently inked page for my fountain pens. Frequently made recipes and an ingredient list. I thought that would be helpful for when I'm making my grocery list for each week. New recipes to try. I need that. I've been in a cooking rut too. But, you know, the habit tracker, that's something I need to continue thinking on how to set that up. I won't be doing a mood tracker. So I think this is going to work for me. So as soon as my new supplies arrive, hopefully within the next week, I ordered a couple different notebooks. I'll share them with y'all. I think I'm kind of already leaning toward one in particular to try, but I may set this up on camera as well if y'all would like to check that out. But let me know in the comments what you think about the bullet journaling system. Have you tried it before? Did it work for you or not? Or if it didn't, are you kind of like me, and do you know why it didn't? Did you let the whole concept of decoration override the function? Did you feel like you had to decorate it, or you were not going to decorate it? Surely I'm not alone out there. But I think just thinking about these things, whether you act on it and try a new system or not, I think just having these thoughts and trying to go through the ideas of what is and isn't working for you, sometimes that alone can help get you out of a slump if you find yourself in a planning slump. So hopefully you found some useful information here. Thank y'all so much for tuning in and watching, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.